When Brandon Kingsley destroyed Raven Howard's wheelchair in front of 47 students, he thought he was just picking on another helpless disabled girl. But as 3 black SUVs pulled up to the school and 12 federal agents stepped out, Brandon realized he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because what he didn't know was that the quiet girl he'd been tormenting for months was the daughter of people who could end his family's empire with a single phone call. This is the story of how a 17-year-old in a purple wheelchair brought down the most powerful family in town. The marble floors of Westfield Preparatory Academy gleam under crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars. This isn't just any high school. This is where America's elite send their children to learn that money equals power. At 8 a.m. on this particular Tuesday morning, the hallways buzz with the energy of privilege. Designer backpacks swing from shoulders draped in $1,000 blazers, while luxury cars drop off students who've never known what it means to want for anything. But in the corner of the main hallway, almost invisible against the opulent backdrop, sits 17-year-old Raven Howard. Her purple wheelchair moves silently across the polished stone as she navigates between groups of chattering students who barely register her existence. Her dark hair falls like a curtain around her face, shielding her from the world that has chosen to overlook her. In her lap sits a worn copy of Jane Eyre, the same book her grandmother used to read to her before the accident changed everything. If you're already feeling for Raven and wondering how this incredible story unfolds, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served. And if stories like this one inspire you as much as they inspire me to share them, consider hitting the thanks button below, because your support helps me continue bringing these powerful stories of transformation to light. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. 3 years ago, Raven's life looked completely different. She was the girl who ran track, who laughed too loud at lunch, who never met a challenge she couldn't conquer. But the drunk driver who ran that red light didn't just take her ability to walk. He stole her voice, her confidence, her place in a world that only values what it can see. The purple wheelchair isn't just a mobility device. It's a monument to the most important person in Raven's life, her grandmother, Margaret Howard, who spent her final months working extra shifts at the diner to save $25,000 for this custom chair. The engraving along the armrest reads, "For my brave little Raven," in elegant script. Margaret chose purple because it was her favorite color, the color of the violets she grew in her tiny garden behind the apartment they shared. When Margaret passed away 6 months after the accident, she left behind more than just a wheelchair. She left behind a philosophy that Raven carries like armor. "Silence is strength, my little Raven," she used to whisper during the hardest physical therapy sessions. "Endure with dignity and rise when the moment is right." At the opposite end of the social spectrum stands Brandon Kingsley, and everything about him screams wealth and entitlement. His 6'2" frame fills out a $300 school blazer like he was born to wear it. His father, Jonathan Kingsley, owns half the businesses in town, and his mother sits on every charity board that matters. Brandon has never been told no, never faced a consequence he couldn't buy his way out of, never met a person he couldn't intimidate or impress. This morning, Brandon arrives at school in his brand-new BMW, an early graduation gift that costs more than most teachers make in a year. His entourage follows in their own luxury vehicles, a parade of privilege that announces their arrival like a royal procession. Tyler Morrison, the football captain whose family owns the largest car dealership in 3 counties. Jake Sullivan, whose trust fund could buy a small island. Connor Blake, built like a linebacker and twice as mean, whose judge father has made more than one legal problem disappear. They call themselves the Elite Four, though everyone else has different names for them. The teachers call them future leaders. The parents call them good boys from good families, but the students they torment call them something else entirely. Brandon feeds off the fear in other students' eyes. He collects moments of humiliation like trophies, storing them away for the days when even his father's money can't fill the empty spaces in his soul. For 6 months, Brandon has been circling Raven like a predator studying wounded prey. It started small, as these things always do. A casual "watch where you're rolling" wheels when she tried to pass in the hallway. A snicker and whispered, "There goes the broken bird," when she entered a classroom. Raven's response has always been the same: silence, dignity, and the quiet strength her grandmother taught her to carry. But Brandon's cruelty has an appetite that grows with feeding. Each ignored insult demands a louder one. Each moment of silence challenges him to push harder. What started as casual mockery has evolved into systematic harassment. Brandon has turned tormenting Raven Howard into his favorite hobby. And today, that hobby is about to become an obsession. The escalation follows a predictable pattern, though Raven doesn't see it coming. She's too focused on surviving each day to notice how the attacks have grown more frequent, more personal, more dangerous. In January, the name-calling began in earnest. Brandon started referring to her exclusively as Wheels or Broken Bird, encouraging others to do the same until her real name seemed to disappear from the hallways entirely. By February, the social isolation campaign was in full effect. Brandon made it clear that anyone caught talking to Raven would become his next target. And in the ecosystem of high school hierarchies, that threat carries the weight of law. The cafeteria became a minefield where students would abandon tables rather than sit near her. Conversations died when her wheelchair approached, leaving her surrounded by invisible walls of silence. Marcus Thompson, her only remaining friend, watches this systematic cruelty with growing horror. He's tried to convince Raven to report Brandon, to fight back, to do something other than endure. But Raven always responds the same way, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory. "They want a reaction, Marcus. The moment I give them one, they win." March brings property destruction disguised as accidents. Books knocked from her lap require her to ask for help retrieving them, creating moments of public helplessness that Brandon savors. Her locker is vandalized with a sign reading, "Wheels Only Parking," and when she quietly removes it, another appears the next day. Each act of quiet dignity seems to enrage Brandon further, as if her refusal to break is a personal insult. The pattern escalates through April and May. Tyler Morrison starts accidentally kicking her backpack down hallways, forcing her to chase after scattered papers, while students step around her like she's an obstacle. Jake Sullivan films these moments, posting them to social media with captions like "Obstacle Course Challenge" and "Watch the Wheels Spin." Connor Blake, the silent muscle of their group, has begun positioning himself to block her path, forcing her to ask permission to pass through hallways she has every right to use. Through it all, Raven maintains the composure her grandmother taught her. She cleans up scattered papers without complaint, removes vandalism without reporting it, endures humiliation without tears. But something is building inside her, a pressure that grows with each indignity. Her grandmother's philosophy of silent strength is being tested in ways Margaret Howard never imagined. The breaking point comes on a Tuesday afternoon that starts like any other. Raven sits in the library during lunch period, as she has every day since the isolation campaign began. She's listening to the audiobook of Jane Eyre through earbuds, the narrator's voice providing comfort in a world that has grown increasingly hostile. In 2 hours, she'll go home to her empty apartment and spend the evening doing homework that no longer seems to matter. But today is different. though she doesn't know it yet. Today, Brandon Kingsley has decided that 6 months of patient psychological torture isn't enough anymore. Today, he's going to cross a line that will change both their lives forever. At 2:45 p.m., Raven wheels down the main hallway toward her locker, following the same route she takes every day. The audiobook continues in her ears, Elizabeth Bennet's strength providing inspiration for her own quiet battles. The hallway is crowded with students gathering books for final period. The usual chaos of teenage transition. She navigates carefully between groups, apologizing softly when her wheelchair comes too close to someone's feet. She doesn't see them coming. Brandon and his Elite Four have positioned themselves strategically, emerging from different directions to surround her like wolves converging on isolated prey. The first sign of trouble is the sudden silence that falls over the hallway. 47 students sense predator energy and instinctively create space, pulling out phones to record what everyone knows is about to be a moment worth capturing. Well, if it isn't our favorite speed bump, Brandon's voice cuts through her earbuds like broken glass. Raven removes them slowly, her heart already racing because something in his tone is different today. Hungrier. Rolling around like you own this place, aren't you, Wheels? The response that has served her for 6 months comes automatically. I'm just going to my locker, Brandon, she says quietly, trying to maneuver around the human wall they've created. But today, they don't step aside. Today, Tyler Morrison plants himself directly in her path, while Jake Sullivan positions his phone for the perfect angle. Oh, she speaks, Tyler announces with mock surprise. The broken bird has a voice after all. Connor Blake says nothing, but his presence looms like a threat made flesh. His silence has always been more menacing than the other's words, and today it carries the weight of impending violence. Please, Raven whispers, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory. I just want to get my books and go home. But even as she says it, she knows today is different. There's something in Brandon's eyes that she's never seen before. A cold satisfaction that makes her wheelchair suddenly feel like a trap instead of mobility. Brandon steps closer, his expensive shoes clicking against marble floors that have witnessed 6 months of his escalating cruelty. You know what, Wheels? I'm sick of seeing this ugly thing rolling around my hallway every day, he says, his hand touching her wheelchair's armrest with casual possessiveness. This piece of junk doesn't belong in a place like this. The touch is violation enough, but his words cut deeper. Don't, she says, and for the first time in 6 months, there's something other than quiet acceptance in her voice. Don't call it that. Jake Sullivan's camera catches the moment her composure cracks. Ooh, the cripple's getting feisty, he announces to his social media audience. This is good content, guys. Make sure you're following for more exclusive Westfield drama. But Brandon isn't interested in social media fame. He's found something more precious than clicks and views, something he's been hunting for 6 months. He's found Raven's breaking point, and he's going to exploit it with the systematic cruelty that only comes from having too much power and too little conscience. His eyes find the engraving along her armrest, and his smile turns predatory. For my brave little Raven, he reads aloud, his voice dripping with disdain. What kind of sappy garbage is that? Probably says property of the Reject Club, in whatever pathetic language that is. The words hit Raven like physical blows. This isn't just her wheelchair anymore. It's her grandmother's final gift. The last connection to the only person who ever truly understood her. Stop, she says, and her voice carries a warning that Brandon is too arrogant to heed. Please, that's from my grandmother. Connor Blake, speaking for the first time, delivers the cruelest blow of all. Your dead grandmother bought you this thing. Even dead people have better taste than this garbage. The hallway falls completely silent. Even students who have watched 6 months of escalating harassment know that some lines should never be crossed. The mention of Raven's deceased grandmother has shifted the energy from casual cruelty to something darker, something that feels like desecration. Raven's final appeal carries the desperation of someone who has endured everything she can possibly endure. "She's gone," she whispers, tears starting to blur her vision. "This is all I have left of her. Please, I've never done anything to you. Just let me go." But Brandon Kingsley has never learned to recognize when he's gone too far. His sadistic smile spreads wider as he realizes he's found the one thing in the world that can make this quiet girl beg. "You want to go, broken bird?" "Sure," he says, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a hunter who has finally cornered his prey. But this rust bucket stays here. What happens next unfolds with the terrible inevitability of a natural disaster. Brandon grabs Raven's arm and yanks her from her wheelchair with brutal efficiency, sending her tumbling to the marble floor, while 47 students watch in horrified silence. Tyler Morrison and Connor Blake hold her down while she tries desperately to crawl back to her chair. Jake Sullivan films everything, his commentary providing a running narration of destruction that will haunt the internet forever. The wheelchair that Margaret Howard saved 2 years to buy becomes a target for systematic annihilation. Brandon produces a baseball bat from his locker with the efficiency of someone who has planned this moment carefully. The control panel sparks and smokes under his assault. The purple cushion that matched Margaret's violets is torn away and thrown into a trash can like refuse. The armrests that supported Raven through 3 years of recovery are snapped off with casual brutality. But the worst moment comes when Connor Blake stomps repeatedly on the engraving, grinding his expensive shoes against the words, "For my brave little Raven," until they become an unreadable mess of scratched metal. With each impact, something breaks inside Raven that goes deeper than bones or electronics. They're not just destroying her mobility, they're desecrating her grandmother's memory, turning love into wreckage. "You destroyed her gift," Raven sobs from the floor, surrounded by the scattered pieces of the most meaningful thing in her world. She saved for 2 years, worked double shifts. It was all I had left of her. Brandon kicks the broken pieces toward her with the casual cruelty of someone who has never loved anything enough to understand loss. "Maybe next time your dead granny will buy you something that actually works," he sneers. "Oh wait, she can't? Because she's dead." But something fundamental shifts in Raven's expression. The tears don't stop, but behind them, something else emerges. For the first time in 6 months, her voice carries absolute clarity when she speaks. "You have no idea what you just did." Tyler Morrison kicks a wheel across the hallway, sending it spinning like a discus. "What's the broken bird gonna do? Fly after us? Oh, wait! You can't!" They walk away laughing, leaving Raven sitting among the debris of her grandmother's final gift. No teacher intervenes. No administrator appears. No adult acknowledges that they've just witnessed the systematic destruction of a disabled student's mobility device. The other students slowly disperse, afraid to help, afraid to get involved, afraid to become Brandon Kingsley's next target. Only Marcus Thompson remains, helping Raven gather the scattered pieces of metal and electronics that used to be her independence. She clutches the mangled nameplate to her chest, and Marcus sees something in her eyes that he's never seen before. The quiet girl who has endured 6 months of escalating harassment without complaint is gone. In her place sits someone who has been pushed past every limit she thought she had. "Raven," Marcus whispers, but she's not listening to him anymore. She's listening to a voice from memory, her grandmother's final lesson echoing across the years. Margaret Howard taught her that silence is strength, that dignity is power, that patience is the greatest weapon of all. But Margaret also taught her that there comes a moment when enough is enough. That night, alone in her bedroom, Raven makes the phone call that will change everything. Her parents answer on the first ring, concern evident in their voices because their daughter never calls unless something is wrong. Diana Howard, director of CIA operations for the West Coast, listens with growing fury as her daughter describes months of systematic harassment that she never reported. General Thomas Howard, commanding officer of the largest military installation in 3 states, takes notes with military precision as Raven outlines every escalation, every humiliation, every moment of calculated cruelty. "They destroyed Grandma's wheelchair," Raven says, her voice steady now with purpose. "They destroyed her memory, her gift, everything she worked for. I tried to handle it the way she taught me, but they went too far." The silence on the other end of the phone carries the weight of decisions being made. When her father speaks, his voice has the cold precision of someone who has spent 30 years learning how to eliminate threats to national security. "Who did this to you, sweetheart?" "Brandon Kingsley and his friends," Raven answers. "But this isn't about revenge, Dad. It's about justice. Can you help me show them what real power looks like?" Within 6 hours, a team of federal agents begins compiling everything there is to know about the Kingsley family. Tax records, business dealings, political connections, criminal history that money has kept buried for decades. The Howard family resources are considerable. Diana's CIA clearance opens doors that most people don't even know exist, while Thomas's military connections provide access to surveillance systems that can track every financial transaction the Kingsleys have made in the past 5 years. What they discover is a family empire built on corruption, held together by bribes, and protected by a network of officials who have been purchased like any other commodity. Brandon Kingsley isn't just a spoiled rich kid. He's the heir to a criminal enterprise that has been hiding behind charitable donations and political contributions for 2 generations. The intelligence gathering reveals systematic patterns of harassment at Westfield Prep, with Brandon targeting not just Raven, but 12 other students over the past 2 years. The school administration has covered up assault charges, grade manipulation, and drug distribution because the Kingsley family donates $3 million annually to the school's endowment fund. Every authority figure who should have protected these children has been purchased instead. But the Howards have resources that money can't buy: federal jurisdiction, military intelligence capabilities, and the kind of connections that can make problems disappear permanently. The plan they develop over the next 48 hours is comprehensive, legal, and devastating. They're not just going to stop Brandon Kingsley, they're going to dismantle the entire system that created and protected him. The first phase begins with a new wheelchair, not just any wheelchair, but a custom-built titanium model worth $100,000. Equipped with recording devices, GPS tracking, and communication systems that would make a spy jealous. When it arrives at Westfield Prep, it comes with an escort that makes Brandon's BMW look like a toy. 3 black Mercedes Maybach SUVs, each worth more than most people's houses, each carrying 4 federal agents in matching black suits. Watching Raven sit among the broken pieces of her grandmother's final gift, knowing that the people who should have protected her chose money over justice instead. What would you have done in her situation? Comment below and let me know, because what happens next is going to change everything. The transformation is immediate and undeniable. The girl who was invisible yesterday becomes the most watched person at Westfield Prep today. And the boys who destroyed her wheelchair suddenly find themselves asking very different questions. Because sometimes the quietest voice carries the greatest power. And Brandon Kingsley is about to learn that some families have resources that no amount of money can match. The three black Mercedes Maybach SUVs arrive at Westfield Preparatory Academy at exactly 3:15 p.m., their synchronized approach drawing every eye in the parking lot. Students stop mid-conversation, teachers pause in their tracks, and even the maintenance staff emerge from buildings to witness this unprecedented display of power. Each vehicle costs more than most families earn in 5 years. Their tinted windows reflect the afternoon sun like obsidian mirrors, hiding occupants who move with military precision. 12 federal agents emerge simultaneously from the three vehicles, their movements choreographed with the efficiency of a special operations team. Black suits, dark sunglasses, and communication earpieces mark them as professionals whose presence at a high school graduation means someone's world is about to change dramatically. They form a protective corridor from the SUVs to the main entrance. Their very existence transforms the campus atmosphere from academic privilege to federal investigation. Brandon Kingsley watches from the senior parking lot, his BMW suddenly looking like a child's toy beside these monuments to real power. For the first time in 18 years of entitled existence, he feels something he's never experienced before. Fear. "Who the hell are those guys?" Tyler Morrison whispers, but Brandon doesn't answer because he's starting to suspect he already knows. The timing is too perfect, the display too pointed, the message too clear. The agents escort a figure from the middle SUV, and the entire school holds its collective breath. Raven Howard emerges, no longer the broken girl they destroyed 3 days ago, but something entirely transformed. Her new wheelchair gleams like military equipment. Titanium frame, advanced electronics, and a presence that commands respect rather than pity. She moves through the corridor of federal protection with quiet dignity. The same girl who sat on marble floors gathering the pieces of her grandmother's gift now approaches her school like visiting royalty. Principal Harrison appears at the main entrance, his usual arrogance replaced by nervous confusion. He's taken Kingsley money for 5 years, covered up their crimes, enabled their corruption, but federal agents don't typically escort students to class. "Is there some kind of problem here?" he asks, though his voice lacks its usual authority. When federal agents arrive unannounced, there's always a problem, and it's usually bigger than anyone imagines. Agent Sarah Martinez, the lead coordinator for Raven's protection detail, hands Harrison a folder with the efficiency of someone delivering a death sentence. Miss Howard requires enhanced security measures due to ongoing threats to her safety, she explains, her voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "We'll be conducting a comprehensive review of campus safety protocols. I trust you'll provide full cooperation." Harrison opens the folder with trembling hands. Inside are photographs of Brandon's assault, detailed reports of systematic harassment, and documentation of administrative negligence that could destroy careers and end the school's federal funding. His face goes white as he realizes the scope of what he's enabled. The Kingsley donations suddenly seem inadequate compensation for the federal investigation he's now facing. Students part like the Red Sea as Raven wheels toward her locker, her federal escort maintaining professional distance while making their protection unmistakably clear. Conversations stop as she passes, phones appear to record this unprecedented moment, and the social hierarchy that ruled Westfield Prep for generations shifts fundamentally in the space of 5 minutes. The invisible girl has become the most powerful person on campus. Over the next 2 weeks, The Elite Four discover what systematic justice feels like when it's delivered by people who understand power better than money can teach. Each member of Brandon's crew faces consequences that have been carefully calibrated to match their crimes. Tyler Morrison receives a phone call from UCLA informing him that his football scholarship has been revoked due to grade fixing that suddenly come to light. Academic fraud carries serious penalties, and universities don't appreciate having their reputations tainted by corrupt admissions processes. Jake Sullivan's trust fund becomes the subject of an IRS audit that reveals tax evasion spanning 3 generations. His family's accountant, who has been hiding income in offshore accounts for decades, suddenly finds federal investigators asking uncomfortable questions about financial records that were supposed to remain private forever. Jake's unlimited spending money disappears overnight. His social media influence evaporates when his followers realize his wealth was largely fictional. Connor Blake discovers that assault charges his judge father made disappear have been refiled with federal prosecutors who don't owe political favors to local officials. The victims he intimidated into silence have found their voices again, backed by federal witness protection and legal resources that make his family's connections look provincial. His future transforms from guaranteed privilege to potential federal prison time. Each victory is clean, legal, and perfectly timed. No violence, no illegal revenge, just the systematic application of justice that money has been preventing for years. Brandon watches his empire crumble from the periphery. His friends abandon him as their own lives implode. Teachers who once fawned over his family name suddenly find reasons to avoid him, and students who feared his wrath now regard him with the contempt reserved for fallen tyrants. The school administration faces its own reckoning. Principal Harrison's acceptance of Kingsley bribes triggers a federal investigation into corruption in public education that spreads far beyond Westfield Prep. School board members who took donations to look the other way find themselves answering subpoenas. Teachers who enabled harassment face professional review boards. The entire system that protected wealthy bullies while abandoning their victims begins to collapse under federal scrutiny. But the Kingsley family's troubles extend far beyond their son's scholastic difficulties. Diana Howard's CIA connections reveal business practices that constitute federal crimes, tax evasion that spans decades, and political bribes that violate campaign finance laws. Jonathan Kingsley's empire, built on corruption and sustained by purchased immunity, faces investigation by agencies that don't negotiate with local donors or respect traditional power structures. Raven watches this systematic dismantling with quiet satisfaction. She attends classes surrounded by federal protection, completes her assignments with the focus of someone who has found her purpose, and prepares for a graduation ceremony that will serve as the final act in Brandon Kingsley's downfall. The girl who endured 6 months of harassment without complaint has learned to wield power with surgical precision. Graduation day arrives with perfect California weather. The outdoor ceremony attracts hundreds of parents, local officials, and media representatives who have heard whispers about federal investigations and systematic corruption. The stage is set against Westfield Prep's most photogenic backdrop. Blooming gardens and classical architecture that speak to generations of wealth and privilege now serve as the setting for a very public reckoning. Brandon Kingsley sits in the 3rd row of graduates, surrounded by empty chairs where his former friends should be. Tyler lost his graduation privileges due to academic fraud. Jake transferred schools to escape federal scrutiny, and Connor remains under house arrest pending federal charges. The isolation that Brandon imposed on others has returned to consume him. He faces his final day at Westfield Prep alone, abandoned, and increasingly desperate. The ceremony proceeds with traditional formality until Principal Harrison announces a surprise addition to the program. This year's valedictorian address will be delivered by a student whose courage and resilience embody the best of Westfield Prep's values, he says, though his voice carries the weight of someone reading from a script written by federal prosecutors. Please welcome Miss Raven Howard. The applause is immediate and sustained. Students who witnessed her destruction now celebrate her resurrection. Parents who heard whispers of her story respond with emotional support. And media representatives capture every moment of this unprecedented reversal of fortune. Raven approaches the podium with the same quiet dignity she's maintained throughout her ordeal. Her titanium wheelchair gleams in the afternoon sun like armor forged from adversity. Her speech begins quietly, thoughtfully, with words that carry the weight of hard-earned wisdom. Strength isn't measured by how much power you have over others, she says, her voice carrying clearly across the assembled crowd. True strength is what you do when you have every reason to break, but choose to rise instead. Brandon shifts uncomfortably in his chair. Every word feels directed at him personally, though Raven never mentions names or specific incidents. She speaks about resilience in the face of cruelty, about the difference between privilege and character, about the responsibility that comes with power and the consequences that follow its abuse. The subtext is unmistakable. Everyone present understands exactly who she's describing. Some people believe that money can buy immunity from consequences, Raven continues, her eyes scanning the audience with growing confidence. They think wealth provides protection from justice. That power means never having to answer for the harm they cause others. But they're wrong, because there are forces in this world that money can't purchase, and justice is one of them. The camera crews capture every moment as Brandon's composure finally cracks. He stands abruptly, his chair scraping against portable flooring as he prepares to flee this public humiliation. But the same federal agents who escorted Raven to school now block his exit routes. Agent Martinez approaches him with professional courtesy that barely conceals her satisfaction. "Mr. Kingsley," she says, her voice carrying across the silent ceremony grounds through the podium's sound system, "you're under arrest for assault, destruction of property, and conspiracy to deprive civil rights under federal statute. You have the right to remain silent, though I suspect that won't be a problem for you." The handcuffs click into place with metallic finality that echoes through speakers designed to amplify graduation speeches, not felony arrests. Raven continues her address as federal agents escort Brandon from the ceremony. "Education isn't just about academic achievement," she says, watching the boy who tormented her face the consequences of his choices. "It's about learning that actions have consequences, that character matters more than connections, and that sometimes the people you dismiss as powerless have resources you never imagined." The standing ovation lasts for 5 full minutes. Students, parents, faculty, and media representatives rise as one to honor not just Raven's academic achievement, but her triumph over systematic cruelty. She accepts their recognition with grace, but her mind is already moving beyond this moment. Brandon's arrest is just the beginning of a larger transformation she intends to lead. 3 months later, the changes at Westfield Prep are comprehensive and permanent. Principal Harrison has been replaced by Dr. Elena Vasquez, an educator whose zero-tolerance policy for harassment applies equally to all students regardless of family wealth. The school board has been restructured to include community representatives who can't be purchased by wealthy donors. New policies require immediate reporting of all harassment incidents to federal authorities rather than local administrators. Brandon Kingsley serves his sentence at a federal facility for young offenders, learning what it means to be powerless in an environment where his family name carries no weight. His father faces federal charges that will likely result in decades of imprisonment. while their business empire faces asset forfeiture that will leave the family bankrupt. The corruption that protected them for generations has been systematically dismantled by federal investigators who specialize in organized crime. Raven Howard begins her freshman year at Stanford University with a full scholarship funded by a foundation that supports disabled students who have overcome adversity. Her titanium wheelchair rolls across campus with the same quiet dignity it carried through Westfield's marble hallways. But now, it represents triumph rather than tragedy. She studies international relations and criminal justice. Her future plans include graduate school, law school, and eventually a career in federal law enforcement. The other victims of Westfield's toxic culture have found their voices. 12 students who suffered in silence now lead anti-bullying initiatives that have transformed the school's social environment. Marcus Thompson serves as student body president, implementing policies that protect vulnerable students and ensure that wealth never again purchases immunity from consequences. But perhaps the most significant change is less visible. The culture of fear that allowed systematic harassment to flourish has been replaced by accountability that extends from student interactions to administrative decisions. Federal oversight continues. Agent Martinez maintains an office on campus, ensuring that the reforms implemented after Raven's case become permanent features of Westfield's educational environment. The story appears complete. Justice has been served, systems have been reformed, and the quiet girl in the purple wheelchair has transformed both her own life and the institution that failed her. But as Raven prepares for her first Stanford finals, she receives a phone call that suggests her work is far from finished. "Miss Howard?" The voice on the other end introduces itself with professional courtesy. "This is Director Chen from the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Special Victims Unit. We've been following your case with great interest, and we have a proposition that might appeal to someone with your particular combination of skills and experience." Raven sits in her dorm room, surrounded by law books and case studies, as Director Chen continues. "We're establishing a new task force focused on institutional corruption that targets vulnerable populations, particularly in educational environments. We need someone who understands both the victim's perspective and the systematic nature of abuse that wealth and power can enable." The offer hangs in the air like a challenge. Join the FBI after graduation, receive specialized training in federal law enforcement, and spend her career dismantling the kind of corruption that nearly destroyed her own life. It's everything she's been preparing for without realizing it. The logical conclusion of a journey that began with broken wheelchair pieces on marble floors. There are hundreds of schools like Westfield Prep across the country, Director Chen explains, and thousands of students like you were, suffering in silence while administrators look the other way because the checks keep coming. We need someone who can identify these situations before they reach the breaking point you experienced. Raven considers the proposal with the same careful deliberation that has guided every decision since that terrible Tuesday afternoon. This isn't just a career opportunity. It's a chance to ensure that no other disabled student sits alone among the broken pieces of a destroyed gift, while adults who should protect them choose money instead. "When do we start?" she asks, and Director Chen's satisfied chuckle carries across 3,000 miles of telephone line. But as Raven hangs up the phone and returns to her studies, she has no idea that in a private boarding school in Vermont, another quiet girl in a wheelchair is enduring the same systematic harassment she once faced, and that this new victim has a secret even more dangerous than federal parents. Some stories end with justice served and lessons learned. Others are just the beginning of something much larger, much more complicated, and much more powerful than anyone can imagine. The quiet voice that carried the greatest power is about to discover that power has responsibilities that extend far beyond personal justice. And somewhere in the shadows of elite education, forces that make the Kingsley family look like amateur criminals are taking notice of the girl who brought down their former business partners. Raven Howard's story is complete, but Agent Howard's story is just beginning.